It's been a few weeks since Naomi Judd passed away. If you don't know who Naomi Judd is, she was one half of the country duo, the Judds, who just rocked the 80s and 90s country, brought a fresh sound, were just amazingly talented women. It was a mother and daughter duo. And I loved the Judds. So it's been a few weeks now since she passed, since she took her own life. And I was thinking about the irony of the fact that Naomi Judd took her own life, because way back when about 2008, 2009, I get my timeline a little confused, was when I was really, really depressed and suicidal, and I wanted to die. And I was looking for things to live for. And I knew I would not kill myself because of my children. That was the one thing that I was very clear on, that I'm not going to leave that legacy for my children, which I'm very grateful for. But I started to look for things that I loved. And a couple of things that I really knew I liked was the color blue, cobalt, really bright blue, because I'm colorblind, so I like that bright blue, chocolate chip cookies, and the Judds. And I figured as long as I had blue things in my life, chocolate chip cookies, and the Judds, I could go on. God, I love the Judds so much. John and I were up in Oregon going to Crater Lake, and just the day after she died, and we were listening, and they played hours and hours of Judd's music, and I didn't get bored for hours listening to their music, and really touched my life. But then I started thinking a little bit further. I was listening to Pandora, and Karen Carpenter came out. And if you remember Karen Carpenter of the Carpenters, she died, I think it was a heart attack, because she was anorexic. This was before we talked about anorexia and eating disorders. Then I started thinking about Amy Winehouse and Whitney Houston and Heath Ledger and Kurt Cobain, and we can go on and on and on and on about people who deal. These are the ones who we know about because they died, and they died in spectacular fashion, so we know about it. Now, it's in fashion now to talk about mental health. I'm so glad that we're talking about mental health. But when we look at these stars, we look at Naomi Judd, just absolutely stunning, working with her daughter, healing some old wounds with her families, and she couldn't get out of her own way. When Naomi and when Wynonna and Ashley talked about how she just couldn't see that she was worthwhile, even days before she was going to be inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Karen Carpenter, I remember the eulogy about Whitney Houston from, I forgot his name, but about how she just wanted to be good. She wanted to please, and it was just too much for her. So I think about these people who are bright and shiny on TV, in the movie screen, music, and then we find out years later, like, what are the stars now that we know that Britney Spears, like listen to me, I can just go on and on. We find out years later what was going on with them and the help that they needed. And I think about the people in my life who suffer from anxiety, stress, mental illness, and depression, and all of that. And the fact that it's something that we suffer with in silence. Again, we're talking about it more, but I want to talk about it a lot more. If you're listening to this podcast, that means that you're a person who probably has children, probably has a wife, husband, or ex-spouse. You have elderly parents, or they just passed, and you're trying to work on your career, and you're just treading water. And you don't have time for that spiritual solution. You don't have time for that mindfulness stuff. You don't have time to go get therapy. You don't have time to go do trauma work because you're just trying to make a living. My question to you is, what life are you living, right? So we run really hard. That whole expression, you're climbing the ladder only to find out you're on the wrong building. We're climbing the ladder. We're working real hard. We're keeping our businesses going. We're keeping everything going. And the question is, have you looked at the quality of it? Have you slowed down long enough? I know it's scary. It's scary to stop and say, my marriage may not be what I think it should be, what I want it to be. And I'm afraid to think about that because of the consequences, right? Because I may have to leave my marriage, or I may actually have to have a conversation, which is scarier. I think it's easier to leave your marriage than have the conversations you need to have to make the marriage work. or the job that I have, or I'm just not being the person I want to be. It's scary to stop and think about those things. So what we do is we bury it, we bury it, we bury it, and then it really, really starts to affect our mental health. There's a reason it's billions and billions of dollars of depression medicine. A lot of us aren't clinically depressed. We don't have a chemical imbalance. A lot of us have just slowly died and buried our true selves and have not had the conversations, have not taken the time to create the life that we want. So, if you're clinically depressed, of course, like, I'm not against medication at all. That's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is totally about my heartbreak over Naomi Judd and my heartbreak over the fact that, I'm going to be 60 in a couple months. And it was about at 50 that I kind of woke up to, I get to create my life. And that's what I want for you. I want you to address your mental health. I couldn't create my life if I didn't address the traumas from my childhood, I couldn't create my life if I didn't get some therapy to figure out how some of my behaviors were destructive. I couldn't create a new life until I got coaching to get new insights and a new way of looking at things. I couldn't create this new life if I didn't find mindful practices and meditation and spirituality. So what tools do you need to start creating your life before it turns into mental health issue, right? This is all intertwined. It's all about our well-being. It's why I do this podcast. It's why I do my workshops. It's why I coach in the first place. I've found something for myself and I desperately want it for you. So how can I help? What tools do you need? I can point you in the right direction, but choose something. One of them is just slowing down and taking stock. I promise you, it's terrifying to take stock of your life and your marriage and what career you have and all that. You don't have to change anything just because you look at it. And I am going to ask you to make baby steps when you do decide what you actually want. So just slow down, take care of yourself, get the help that you need. I'm here to help. I love you guys. Have a great rest of the day.